As Democrats search for answers on exactly what went wrong in Virginia on Tuesday night and how they can stop it from happening again in next year's midterms, Senator Tim Kaine wasn't afraid to point the finger at Congress.
Look, congressional Dems hurt Terry McAuliffe. I mean, I'm going to be blunt. It's humbling to say it, but if we had been able to deliver infrastructure and reconciliation in mid-October, he could have sold universal pre-K, affordable child care, infrastructure, creating jobs. And you know what? We're going to get both of these bills. It's been obvious to me for at least a month we're going to get a deal, but we're going to get it, probably at the end of November. And having suffered the loss in Virginia and really narrow result in New Jersey, now we have a tough narrative that we have to face. So Democrats control both houses, and they have to act like it, have to be disciplined, have to get results. And our inability to come together and get a result hurt him.
However, not all Democrats are being as willing to be as introspective. The New York Times' Blake Hounshell reported on Tuesday night, quote, "Some in Biden land are already asking themselves if the president has allowed himself to be tugged too far to the left while in office, and those voices are likely to get louder now."
During his own reflecting on what took down McAuliffe, Matt Taibbi wrote in TK News yesterday, the drama that played out in upscale Loudoun County, Virginia over the last year or so and cost Democratic candidate Terry McAuliffe the governorship last night is a book waiting to be written. In fact, if companies like HBO or Netflix have any sense, it will soon be a movie as well, because almost every hot-button issue in American national politics was rolled up somewhere in this sprawling, preposterous, rage-filled suburban drama. Here to make sense of what or who upset Dems' 12-year winning streak in Virginia is co-host of the Useful Idiots podcast and author of TK News, Matt Taibbi. Matt, welcome.
Thanks for having me back.
So tell us a little bit about what you wrote in your reporting on Loudoun County. So I read a lot of it, and you're saying that, it wasn't necessarily that the irate parents who are going for Youngkin know exactly what critical race theory is or see it all over the place, but they are upset with some kind of critical race theory adjacent that I talked about a lot, kind of diversity initiative stuff that seems really pointless and that they don't like a lot.
Yeah, so I should stress, I've only done my first round of reporting on this. I'm in the early impressions phase, but I met a lot of parents who are really angry and are the kind of people you would describe as disinclined to be involved in politics. I met a lot of people who had traditionally voted Democratic, who were minorities, either Asian or South Asian, and had voted Democratic their whole lives, but now switched over. And the issue really, I think, for a lot of these people wasn't so much the content. It wasn't so much critical race theory or whatever it was they're calling it. The culturally responsive teaching is a term that they were using down there. It had a lot more to do with control and this idea that the school board down there was simply shutting the parents out. They were meeting in a locked Facebook group and not providing information about what was going on. And this led to a series of incidents that snowballed over time and became the focus of the whole state. And ultimately, I think it's what swung the election in Virginia the other night.
Can you talk a little bit about that closed Facebook group? Because I think that people are not quite understanding the power of that. And related to that, in Fairfax County, there was a massive anti-school closure or school closure skeptics Facebook group that eventually evolved into the Fairfax Parents Association, basically, that then became politicized. It was started bipartisan, eventually drifted pretty clearly in a Youngkin direction. But can you tell us a little bit about that Loudoun County Facebook group? How many people were on it, and who was on it? Because I think that's even more important.
Yeah, so there were 6 members of the school board on this group. I think it was the Anti-Racist Parents Facebook group of Loudoun County is what it was called. And I think there were roughly 600 people in the group. It was locked. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I'm told, that there might be a legal issue with essentially having a quorum of school board members who are meeting in secret without public access. At least there were some parents who were upset about that notion, right? And it's the subject of litigation right now. And as you mentioned, there was sort of a cross-pollination of groups that were upset about school closures, with some people who are upset about the curriculum. So when we're talking about sort of labeling this as people responding to a racial dog whistle, well, that's not entirely accurate. I think a lot of the people who were taking on the school board, they were motivated by a variety of different complaints. Some of them having to go back to the closures, and they've just sort of come together as an umbrella protest group.
Matt, do you think that Virginia and what has happened there is like a bellwether for what's about to happen all across the country?
Well, I certainly think it's a highly significant development, because I would say one of the major results of if you're looking to analyze electoral politics in America in the last few election cycles dating back to 2016, the biggest phenomenon that you would come away with is that these kinds of counties, well-heeled, high-income counties with high percentages of college graduates, they have been dominated by Democrats in the Trump years. With Trump on the ballot, those places were overwhelmingly voted Democrat, whereas they used to be, as recently as the Clinton years, it was a toss-up, or maybe even a little bit swung in the Republican direction. Now, what this shows is that Republicans are again competitive in those types of districts, which is a major difference from what we've seen in the last couple of election cycles.
And Matt, so far the national Democratic response to this question has been, either to ignore it or to be, just hostile about the idea of even raising the question. So I think, obviously the first, if you were kind of a Democratic strategy, you're a consultant and Democrats bring you in and say, what do we actually need to do about this situation that appears to have cost us this election? Obviously the first one is we'll learn about it. But then second, what would you say? What did Democrats do wrong here?
Well, the overall theme that cuts across all the different issues that have hurt Democrats dating back to 2016 is this notion of the Democratic Party as out of touch, elitist, and sort of preaching to the electorate from a top-down position. And this is kind of the theme of what we're talking about when we talk about these CRT issues. There are a lot of parents who what they're seeing is academics who are imported come into the school system. They hire out very high-priced consultants to come in and do equity assessments, and then they're sort of told, well, this is the right way to think, and they're not sure about that, right? And so I think if I were a Democratic strategist, I would do a lot of listening about how popular actually are these policies, like, and is this something that we want to go to battle over or not? Because education is the kind of thing that is either the number one or two issue with whole ranges of voters. And if you're going to commit yourself and make mistakes like Terry McAuliffe did and say things like, we're not going to let parents dictate what we teach in schools, that's a losing issue. Like, you're not going to win that, no matter what the specifics are, if that's what your position is, superficially.
And do you have a take on how you can maintain and expand the gains of racial justice and the goal of racial justice, without kind of diving into this weird kind of DEI world that then creates this outrage among parents? Because obviously you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Sure. I mean, there's lots of different strategies for getting there. You could teach more texts by African American authors or by minority authors. You could do all sorts of things. You could teach different history books. The issue here is that there's a very specific kind of approach that they're advocating here, which again, as you said before, it may not be critical race theory. It's critical race theory adjacent. It really stresses racial difference. Like for instance, they had this thing called the Equity Ambassador Program, which was originally designed to be something where they would pick students of color exclusively to report to members of the administration about things they heard students saying. It's like sort of secret hall monitors in school.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that that's like the best way to teach the history of racial injustice in this country. Like, there are things you can do south of that would probably be effective as well. So, you know, there's more than one way to get to the end goal that I think we all would agree upon.
Yeah.
South of that, no pun intended. But Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on.
And we'll have more Rising right after this.